It is an emotional piece. It's an emotional journey, as well as a little bit of an adventure. But the target, the objective, was to honor those two gentlemen, along with Robert Curtis, and hopefully let people spend some time with some old friends. That was the idea. His choices, his mannerisms, his version of Captain Kirk. When the digital prosthetics go on, and it's in real time, and I can look at the feed, and I can see Captain Kirk. There he is. I love that Jules felt it was important to throw in as many indications that all of those different Star Treks all exist all together in one universe or one multiverse or whatever you want to call it, different timelines, who knows. But this is a piece that is intended to exist in all of those Star Trek continuities. There's a reason this guy is just an iconic figure. The talent is off the charts. It's extraordinary.
The 18th of November was 30 years to the day of the theatrical release of Star Trek Generations. That's not the burning fire Sauron would have us believe, but it is a lot of time. After all of it, we'd no right nor reason to expect a coda. We certainly never dreamt of one quite as beautiful as 765874 Unification from OTOY and the Roddenberry Archive. It's also been 9 years since Leonard Nimoy left us, and 8 years since the touching tribute in Star Trek Beyond. To show us his version of Spock once more required the greatest care and compassion. Susan Bay Nimoy, Leonard Nimoy's widow, was brought on board as executive producer for Unification. The film is dedicated for Leonard Nimoy. What would you do with about 8 minutes to change Star Trek forever? Bring back Sisko? Finally explain Voyager's shuttle situation? If you go in with lofty aspirations, there's no room for history to make its own judgments, to coin a phrase from the next film along the way. By all accounts, the creatives behind Unification didn't set out to make an impact. They just tried to make the best piece of art that they could. OTOY and the Roddenberry Archive have achieved something exceptional in such a short space of viewing time, plus a little more with the tie-in shorts. Strip it down, strip all of Star Trek down. What you'll find is a story of friendship, on the inside and the outside. Kirk and Spock are the epitome that began it. Re-add the artistry, the countless hours of hard work, hand in hand with the innovative technology, and you get the formerly impossible of a farewell. In the extraordinary, OTOY and the Roddenberry Archive have made things look simple. If they've changed Star Trek, then it's because they reminded us that the simple is always the most extraordinary. Unification wears its name well. Now, it is as much the integration as two peoples as it is the meeting of two friends before the end.
There's a certain level of audacity and foolhardiness that has gone into the creation of this. So it is very rewarding to see people have such an emotional reaction and to be so patient with our boldness. Because, to a certain extent, we shouldn't have tried, but we did.
As the actor behind the William Shatner veil and producer of Unification, he's in a position to know. Bold, without the slightest shadow of a doubt. Reckless, however, we might have to agree to disagree. Most definitely changing the game. Every millimetre of this project was scrutinised with the utmost attention. Witwer was brought in for his talents in front of the camera, as well as for his knowledge of the technical process behind. Physically and importantly, he was also a match for Kirk, a match for Shatner. Actor Lawrence Selleck plays Spock in the piece, as he had in the previous OTOY Roddenberry Archive short films 765874 Memory Wall and Regeneration.
Movies are special effects. Edward Muybridge did not show you a moving image of a horse and a man on a horse. He took a bunch of images and played them and projected them in rapid succession to create the illusion, the effect of motion. So I've had a huge fascination with special effects because I look at the entire filmmaking process as a special effect. That's not my skin. You're seeing like makeup And that's not the sun, they lit that. There's a whole lighting crew you're not seeing beyond the frame. There's nothing about it is normal or real. It's all a special effect.
Belief has to be created and then suspended. What's exceptional, revolutionary even, about Unification is that you'd never know Shatner wasn't there. And yet, from those first moments of boots on the ground to the clasping of the hand of his dearest friend as the sun sets over New Vulcan, he is. It's all Shatner in appearance, with his blessing, as Kirk. It's all very much Witwer at the same time, at every moment on set. This is not an impression, an impersonation, and nor is it de-aging. It's Witwer's embodiment of Shatner's, of Kirk's physicality, his mannerisms, the way he enters a room or a garden, in the most minute, studied detail, all the way down to the pursing of the lips.
Our job is to inhabit and recreate the iconic pop culture icon version of this character, and approach that character like he was a historical figure. Like if I was playing, I don't know, Winston Churchill, I'd be watching Winston Churchill and learning the mannerisms and all that, and figuring out the hair and figuring out the face and all that. It's the same thing. Treated Captain Kirk, Bill Shatner's Captain Kirk, as if he was a historical figure. Because in many cases, in many senses, he is a historical figure. He was there throughout, Vietnam. He was in our lives throughout the Cold War. He was there front and center during the Civil Rights Movement. That character was pervasive in our culture and influenced our culture.
The technology was always in addition, a mask over the top of the human performance underneath. That makes all the difference. At risk of being more and more of a rarity for Unification, it's safe to say that technology was the tool in service of the creation of the creators, the invention that extends, and not the other way around. There's no machine making decisions. That's not a thing, Sam said. On their website, OTOY go into some detail about how the effect was achieved. Witwer and Selleck were filmed in costume, performing as Kirk and Spock on set, aided by both physical and digital prosthetics, resulting in a period-accurate portrayal matching the appearance of the characters as they originally appeared in TV and film at the time. Shatner also had a hand in forging the film, assisting the OTOY team to fine-tune the technical and creative direction required. With his permission and that of Paramount, Shatner's voice, an excerpt from Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, was also added as Kirk begins to walk forwards in that interstitial space towards New Vulcan. Commenting on the digital prosthetic technology used by OTOY for Unification, Shatner noted that it takes years off of your face so that in a film you can look 20, 30, 50 years younger than you are. As technology continues to march forward at a seemingly exponential rate, the eerily uncanny effects of just 10 years ago are the breathtakingly real of today. In the right hands, change is nothing to be afraid of. OTOY have proven that. Paramount would do well to take note and to invest. As an extra measure of how they did it in Unification, OTOY adds on their website, visual effects in Unification were created using OTOY's Octane rendering software and the Render Network decentralized GPU rendering platform. Characters and props were digitized using OTOY's Academy Award-winning light stage scanning system. That's also the same technology used to help create the Roddenberry archive, preserving Gene's creation for future generations, and we'll come back to that now in a minute. By transcending, by crisscrossing media, OTOY and the archive have invented whole new ways of doing Star Trek. Apply that to the rest of the franchise with the actor talent behind it, and you get the possibility of seeing any and all characters from across Star Trek in live action again. For Sam Witwer, this was also an opportunity to make a statement to everyone across the industry.
The technology is here. It's here. The tech is here. This is an opportunity to colonize this space for actors. This is an opportunity to make a statement to everyone across the industry. Actors don't need to just be part of the process. They need to be essential to the process. Imagine that actors went in to a place and got scanned every year like it was a dentist appointment. And then they had a library of themselves throughout the years that they owned. It was theirs. And then if one of those actors, years later, they're like, we'd like to de-age you to this age. Well, guess what? They either have to create the de-aged version from whole cloth, which is very expensive, or they could license it from the actor. Then the actor gets paid more money. And then the studios, save money because that data makes it a lot cheaper to just to create the illusion, and then everyone's happy. You know, so in a world where residuals have gone away, I'm thinking long term, like this opens up employment opportunities for actors.
In that sense, OTOY haven't just changed Star Trek, they've broken a path for the industry. By making the technology work for them, and for and with the actors, OTOY are crafting a whole new way of being on screen. To change Star Trek forever requires a good sense of what is forever Star Trek. It's a truism because it's true, that all Trek is Trek. OTOY has understood that without value judgment. Unification exemplifies Star Trek's multi-series, multi-movie and multi-century makeup. After all, it is a Kelvin character introduced in Star Trek Discovery who transports Prime Kirk to the Kelvin timeline. In that one moment, the entire franchise is tied together. Yor was far from the only one waiting, watching by the fountain. In one of many heart-rending sequences of the film, Kirk stops to exchange glances with Saavik, played once more by an aged-up Robin Curtis. Steps forward a man from behind her, equally in Vulcan attire, who we know from the credits to be Sorak, who we now know is Spock's son. Without a single line of dialogue, Unification confirms what was in the first draft script of Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home. Kirk, have you told Spock? Saavik, he is not yet prepared to know. Kirk, Saavik, I'm sure you'll find the proper time to tell him of his child. What the f***? Unification writer, executive producer, as well as founder and CEO of OTOY, Jules Urbach, told Trek Movie that he also spoke to the Nimoys, who were sure that Leonard's intent for Star Trek 3 and Star Trek 4 is that this is what happened. Urbach went on to point out that Spock and Saavik were married in the beta canon novel Vulcan's Heart. Moreover, in the Star Trek The Next Generation episode Sarek, Picard notes to Riker that, as a young lieutenant, he had attended the wedding of Sarek's son. That's a bit late for Sybok. Whether Unification is canon, or rather, whether it canonizes all the above, is almost besides the point. It certainly should, but in this case, it's perhaps up to the audience to decide. As is evident in the Trek Movie interview, Urbach purposefully wrote the short film to be open to multiple interpretations, the literal, the emotional, and the spiritual. That is its beauty. That is its selling and buying power. OTOY might well have just changed Star Trek forever by canonizing the very idea of headcanon. As if all that weren't evidence enough to those that OTOY know what they're doing when it comes to Star Trek, we've only just dipped our toe into the waters of that fountain. Plus, the fountain is not even half the story. The man we see in late 24th century Starfleet dress uniform in front of the pastels as Kirk enters the scene is played by John Del Toro. Del Toro is credited as Crusher. Urbach didn't offer any details except to say he is a descendant of Beverly Crusher. Just a little bombshell of a detail that this is either Wesley, Jack, other children notwithstanding, or one of their descendants then. The style of uniform will certainly fit with Wesley's travelling and wedding MO in Star Trek Nemesis. The very eagle-eyed will also have spotted a watcher in the crowd who looks an awful lot like Dr. Kovich. Kovich, as we now know, is Agent Daniels. That's not the only link to Star Trek Enterprise in Unification. By the Fountain too is a half Xindi primate, thank you York Hillebrand, wearing an initiation medal, like the one Daniels gave Captain Archer aboard the Enterprise J in the 26th century in the episode Azati Prime. Credited as one of the observers by the Fountain, we think this Xindi might have been played by Greg Ellis. Ellis was notably the red-shirted chief engineer Olsen in Star Trek 09 and Cardassian Ecor in What You Leave Behind. The Parkland and Fountain scenes could be taking place aboard the Enterprise J, in fact. Go to the ship's listing on the Roddenberry archive and you'll find the interior photos, save for the Fountain, are a striking match. The archive goes on to add that Enterprise J designer Doug Drexler envisioned entire cities and parks in the saucer section, a new technology enabling space folding at the edges of the disk to accommodate a much larger volume inside the saucer section than outside. Effectively, we're talking about a TARDIS. Before we begin to fold up the intricacies of those 8 minutes, we must get to Gary Mitchell and the star at the start of them. You can't keep a now good God down played again by Gary Lockwood, looking just like he had in 1966. According to that interview, OTOY took direct inspiration for that opening scene from the Star Trek number 400 comic story, A Perfect System. In that, Mitchell builds solar systems. Urbach noted, Mitchell has come full circle. He's sort of playing God and learning about humanity's future. He's looking at all of Star Trek's future and all of time. And he is very much responsible for everything you see later in Unification. His contribution is he has seen enough to pass along information. Urbach didn't specify the nature of that information, but he did say that it was being sent to the group holding Kirk's body at Daystrom. From there, it made its way to probably the most important person in all of this, the one after whom OTOY project is named, Yeoman J.M. Colt. All that should be largely enough to convince Paramount to give Urbach and OTOY at least some office space. Now hold your canonical horses, however, because there's more. 765874 is Colt's serial number, given in the 13th issue future tense of the comic book series Star Trek Early Voyages in 1998. In it, Colt is displaced in time from 2254 to 2293, creating an alternate timeline, and then sent back to repair the changes. As Urbach noted once more in that interview, it's on the way back she sees all of Star Trek's timeline. For Urbach, Colt and Spock are observers for the purposes of the OTOY short films, able to see different moments throughout Trek history. Urbach reportedly took inspiration for Spock from the novelization of Star Trek the Motion Picture, which depicts the Vulcan's mind melt with V'ger as an awakening. In 765874 Memory Wall, released on the 22nd of August 2022, Prime Spock can be seen performing a mind meld on what appears to be Prime Colt. As for the version of Colt viewing the Kirk Daystrom station data, Urbach had yet another surprising revelation. Colt is in a Kelvin uniform because this is the Kelvin timeline. This is not the same Colt. She didn't walk over from Prime to Kelvin, she is from Kelvin. And she is not in the Daystrom Institute, but that data, that information, is what she's looking at. Oh, and just in case you didn't know, Mahei Taissa, who plays Colt in all of the 765874 short films, is Urbach's wife. So, for anyone who's been paying attention, Gary Mitchell gets Daystrom information to Colt. Somehow she brings Kirk back to life from the ashes. Kirk bumps into some bloke named Crusher in a park on the Enterprise J. This is Indy Primate with an initiation medal. Kolvich is stood right behind. Kirk meets Saavik and Spock's son Sorak. Yor, the one from Star Trek Discovery, hands Kirk his Generations badge. Kirk is transported to the Kelvin universe. He becomes the TOS version of himself, sees himself as an admiral. Generations undershirt Kirk walks back in. Kirk goes to Spock's dying bedside, holds his hand. Photo case from Star Trek V and Star Trek Beyond is on the table, and an IDIC. The pair look out over New Vulcan as the sun sets. We all cry. This could all easily be taxed with fan service, although that shouldn't always be a dirty phrase. And besides, if all of the 765874 is fan service, it's probably the best fan service you'll ever see. Unification unified. By deftly taking from so many elements of Trek, it's reinforced the connective tissue of all the franchise. Through technological innovation, OTOY and the Roddenberry Archive are keeping Star Trek's past and future alive, the next generation of custodians. What is Star Trek if not a history of the future? Gene Roddenberry's famous vision is but one way of writing down how things will turn out. His optimistic outlook for humanity is as unique now as it was in 1966 and 64. That is what the Roddenberry Archive, a multi-decade collaboration between the Gene Roddenberry estate and OTOY, seeks to preserve. To do that, OTOY's scanning technology is pushing the frontiers of conservation, from models to nearly 1 million pages of documents. Go to the archive's homepage, you'll now find another kind of archive, that of Kirk's records from Daystrom Station, with Kelvin Colt standing just in front. Before Unification, OTOY had changed Star Trek forever by transforming the way we can experience it. The Roddenberry Archive already allows visitors to virtually explore the complete history and legacy of every bridge of the Starship's Enterprise as one-to-one scale in-universe experiences, and so much more. Text narrated by Majel Barrett's computer, you can go from watching Star Trek to taking a seat within it. The efforts of preservation and exploration for current and future generations of fans were in operation during the making of Unification. As OTOY states on their site, major scenes in Unification were filmed twice, ensuring coverage to create video and spatial content mastered for Apple Vision Pro. all outdoor filming locations were scanned in and merged, with GC set extensions becoming part of the archive's growing library of 3D worlds and locations. 765874 Unification has surpassed 3 million views on YouTube at the time of recording. That is a sea of fans watching it change. There is overwhelming fan support and a lot of tears, including mine, for a world where OTOY's skill and technology is implemented readily to the franchise. And if the greenlighting of Star Trek Legacy required the arrival of OTOY in the Roddenberry archive, it'll be worth the wait.
We are what people lean on when they're looking to escape, when they're looking to be uplifted, when they're looking to share a moment in humanity. We create those options, those moments, those vehicles of life.
How has OTOY changed Star Trek forever? They've just rewritten the history of its future.